You are 1 week in, so good for you. This is our second week of prep. I have several things here for us to cook today. If any of you bought ingredients and you're cooking along, that's great. Let me know. And if you have questions along the way, just stop me and we'll take care of that. Here's what we're doing today. We're gonna start with oven roasted chicken thighs. I've got them prepped 2 different ways and I'll go through that with you. How to poach an egg. A sweet potato toast, which is great for breakfast or lunch. If you like to do the stuff over stuff, this is a great base. Yuca and sausage hash, one of those things you can have prepped and ready to go in the morning for breakfast. Street food hot dogs, which are bacon wrapped hot dogs on my website. Asian slaw, that's a great combination. And the sole meuniere, which is actually an old French recipe that I've reimagined for Whole30. So if you're ready to go, let's get started. First, we're gonna do the chicken thighs. What I've done is 2 ways, and it's gonna be very easy for you to follow because some days, you know, it's 4:30 and you don't have dinner ready yet. So we've got that ready to go. And some days you have time to plan, so we've got that ready to go. If you're not ready and you just need a few extra things to throw some chicken in the oven, this is what you'll do. Now, the other part of what I'm doing today is kind of winging it because as you know, some things are in short supply at the grocery stores. I typically buy these chicken thighs, they're organic chicken thighs, already quartered, but this week there weren't any chicken thighs, but there were chicken quarters. So I just separated the leg and the thigh, and I'm gonna show you one of each. So chicken thighs has turned into chicken thighs and legs. Now, if you don't have any time, let me wash my hands real quick. If you don't have any time and you just want to throw some chicken in the oven, this is a really great way to do it. I love this Trader Joe's mushroom all-purpose umami seasoning. It's an easy sprinkle kind of thing to do. I just sprinkle a little bit on the chicken and then I'll do a little salt and pepper. And again, we talked about this last week. Make sure you're using a good kosher salt or sea salt because that's really what's going to give you the best flavor. And then the other thing that I have ready is a simple marinade. It's just balsamic and olive oil. And I took the other 2 chicken pieces after I quartered it and just marinated them for a couple of hours. If you only have 15 minutes, you can give them 15 minutes. If you want to do them overnight, you can do them overnight. The thing I did not do is season them with salt and pepper because if you are going to let it marinate for some time, you don't want it to dry out, and salt has a tendency to dehydrate your meat. So make sure that you just season right before it goes in the oven. And yes, I just am making a mess, but that's half the fun. So this is a preheated 375-degree oven. I'm starting these first because they're going to take the longest to cook, so they'll be cooking while we're doing everything else. So the first cook time will be 20 minutes. Then we'll flip them over and cook them for 10, and then we'll flip them back for the last 5 to get them nice and crispy, and that skin will have a wonderful texture. You did see that I was cooking them on a rack. I think cooking it on a rack really helps to keep the fat rendered out, and it gives it a place to go, and also helps to yield a nice crispy finish. What I really like to do is bring it up to a boil first, and then reduce the temperature so that it simmers. So you can see there's just barely any bubbles. Some people like to add vinegar. I don't like to do that. The next thing I do is I crack the egg into a little dish. I'll swirl the water. And also, I like to use a skillet or something that's wide open and just put enough water to submerge the egg. I think if you're working in a deep pot or a saucepan, it's a little more difficult to manage the egg. It's easier when you have a wide surface, but if all you have is a saucepan, give it a shot in a saucepan. So I'm just gonna create a little whirlpool. I'm not gonna get crazy with it because I don't want the water to splash out. And once that whirlpool gets going, I'm just going to drop that egg right into the center. Just slip it right in. And then I like to kind of pull the white over the top. Now you can see that the white is immediately starting to coagulate, which is exactly what we want. The water is hot enough to cook that albumin, but keep that yolk nice and wet. Now I'm left-handed, so you'll have to do this the opposite way. But I'm just gonna scoop underneath that egg with this slotted spoon and flip it over. And I'll slide him back over into the center. If you have more than one and you have a larger pan, you can space them out. And now that the white is starting to cover the yolk, I just like to use the sides of this slotted spoon to kind of trim the edges. And those will get thrown away after we're finished with our egg. And we're just gonna let that continue to cook in this simmering water until the whites are completely finished. Again, poached eggs are just very simple, as long as you're gentle with it. And we're just gonna get all of those other pieces of egg out of the way. I like to use organic eggs, but again, do what you can afford. I think that the fresher the egg, the better it's gonna respond, especially in a situation like this where you're poaching. The way to tell if an egg is really fresh is when you crack it, the egg white isn't going to spread a lot. I think you probably noticed when it went into the water that the white sort of stayed contained, and also the yolk is gonna stay nice and high. So if you crack an egg onto a saucer, let's say for example, the yolk is gonna be nice and rounded and tall. That's the mark of a fresh egg. If it starts to look a little flat and spread out, it's probably been around for a while. Okay, this guy looks like he's about done. I just like to take a piece of paper towel, fold it in half, and scoop the egg out, just like that. And just let the back of the spoon, let the water kind of roll through the back of that slotted spoon. And we're just gonna place that in a dish for now because we're gonna use that in our yucca hash. Yucca is a starchy vegetable that grows underground as a root. It's also tapioca or cassava, and I buy it frozen either in a Latin market or sometimes a lot of the grocery stores carry it as well. It's already been cleaned, has a really dark skin, almost like a potato on the outside. So this has already been cleaned, and then what I like to do is boil it until it's thawed, and that way it's soft and ready to throw into any recipe like this. Once it's boiled and cooked, you'll see that you can slice and drop them in an air fryer or in the oven and make yucca fries, or you can mash it up the way I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna put a little avocado oil in this pan. I have it on high heat, but I'm gonna turn it down. You can use coconut oil or whatever your preferred cooking fat is, ghee, whatever you like. And you can see this yucca is already cooked, so it's soft. And I just store it in a container like this in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it. It's so soft I can't get it out of the container. Now I'm just gonna put that right into this warm oil. And the other thing that happens with yucca is there's a root in the middle. So as you start to break apart the sections, that just peels right out because you don't want to eat that. It's very tough. Now as these start to sizzle, I'm just going to break them up. And again, I'm using my favorite utensil, a fork. No fancy cooking utensils here. You can do this in a nonstick pan. I like to not cook with nonstick pans very often. You'll see this is going to stick a little bit, but it's okay because it washes. And I'm just breaking this up into some pieces. And I'm gonna let those continue to warm. And while those are warming, I have some bratwurst. Now bratwurst, I buy at Whole Foods in the meat section. This is raw, and I really like it because I can either cook it in the casing or take it out of the casing and mash it up or blend it in with whatever else I'm doing. So I'm just making a slice through the casing, and I'm gonna peel it right off. Just drop that right into the pan with the yuca. Throw that casing away. Now you can see the sausage is starting to brown. So I like to mash it up so it has more of a ground meat texture than a whole sausage link. Again, this bratwurst is from Whole Foods. It's in the meat section, and it comes in pork or chicken. This one is the chicken. And it's delicious. It has no sugar. It's seasoned really great to use in a dinner type of entree or just to have on hand for breakfast. I'll do one sausage link and this much yuca for 2 people. And it's a hearty breakfast. You can throw in some spinach and arugula or kale, whatever kind of greens you might have on hand. If you've got some leftover vegetables from the night before, you can throw in those. This is another one of those stuff over stuff recipes that works out really well. So now as the sausage is browning, I'm just mashing up the yuca and stirring it together. The first time I had yuca hash was at a restaurant in Miami. I was in Miami for the weekend with my husband, and we were finding a place for brunch in Coral Gables on a Sunday morning. And we found this really awesome little restaurant that had an outdoor cafe. And they had used their shredded carnitas with the yuca as a hash on their brunch menu and served it with eggs any style. Of course, I always go for the poached egg. And it was so delicious, I decided that I would find a way to recreate it at home. So if you've already cooked your shredded chicken, like you did from last week's cooking demo in the Instant Pot, or if you do the carnitas recipe on my blog, that's also a great thing to throw in here, and you have less cook time because the meat's already cooked. All you have to do is heat up the yuca, mash it up, add the shredded pre-cooked meat, and you're good to go. Or if you already have cooked breakfast sausages that are compliant and you just want to chunk those up, cut them into small bits and mix those in, you can do that too. So this is almost done. And I'm going to season it with a little salt and pepper. If there's other seasonings that you like to add, get creative. That poached egg on top. And breakfast is done. About Yellowbird Sriracha, but this is compliant. It's sweetened with dates, and it comes in a couple different flavors, and it's delicious on everything, including the yuca hash that I just made. My husband eats pretty much anything with this sriracha on top. So that's a fun tip. This is exactly what it sounds like. I've got some hot dogs. Actually, again, because we're improvising, there were not a lot of hot dogs in the grocery store. So what I have are 2 uncured turkey hot dogs, and I have 2 andouille sausages. So any pre-cooked sausage or hot dog would work great for this recipe. And I prepped a little bit of bacon in advance, meaning I just kind of peeled the slices apart because they'd be a lot easier for live video. And this is uncured bacon. Again, you can use any uncured, no sugar bacon for this recipe. And this is very quick. Just gonna take this piece of bacon and I'm gonna start the hot dog at one end and kind of wrap it around.
We have a question from Sherry, wondering where you normally find your hot dogs.
These are from Whole Foods. They're the 365 brand. They're the uncured turkey hot dogs. Trader Joe's also has a great uncured hot dog. I haven't had much luck at the regular mainstream grocery stores with uncured hot dogs, but I think Walmart has a brand that works. So mostly I'm sticking to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods for that because I seem to have the most luck there. Again, you can use beef, turkey, chicken hot dog. I really like Applegate brand, and that's a, believe, Whole30 approved brand as well. So I'm just gonna do 2 hot dogs and 2 sausages with the bacon. Pan feels nice and hot. I just have it on medium-high heat. Do what works for your stove. And again, this is a non-stick pan, but because this bacon is pretty greasy, I don't think I need to prepare the pan with any sort of fat at first. A lot of that bacon fat's just gonna render out on its own. And as they brown, we'll just keep turning them until the bacon is cooked all the way around. Since the sausage and hot dog are pre-cooked, we don't have to worry about those being cooked on the inside. We just want to get them hot. But this is a great thing to prep several in advance and just have in the fridge and reheat in the microwave or reheat in a skillet, and lunch is good to go. They're also fun for tailgate parties, or if you're in a situation where you're going to someone's house and you need a Whole30 compliant dish to take along. It's a great option. And I think I hear my oven. So we're gonna flip the chicken. And you can see right away at 375, it's gotten a beautiful golden color. The marinade from the balsamic is giving this a really beautiful color. I'm just gonna turn those over. All I did with this rack was just brush it with a little coconut oil and a pastry brush or a barbecue brush. And they don't stick at all that way. So now they're flipped over and we're gonna give them 15 minutes. And while those are gonna continue to cook, we're gonna turn these hot dogs, and you can see they're already starting to get a nice crispy brown bacon color. I'm going to show you a few tricks from my Asian slot. I really like to just buy the pre-shredded coleslaw mix. If you can find the coleslaw mix with the red cabbage, that's delicious too. This has a little bit of red along with some carrots and green cabbage. So I'm just gonna put that in a bowl. New coconut aminos with wasabi from New Primal has been my absolute new favorite thing to put on everything. So we're gonna switch up the recipe from the blog, from using regular coconut aminos to the coconut aminos with wasabi. If you want to give that a try, do that. If not, go back to the regular one, a little bit of sesame oil and some fish sauce. And this was her technique. She would take the vinegar and the cap and pour some vinegar into the cap and swirl it over the slaw. She also used a lot of mayonnaise and a lot of milk. I've changed it up a little bit, but basically that's a tablespoon. So we got 3 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, about a 1/4 cup of the coconut aminos, which I just like to eyeball. You know how I am with the precise measurements. A little splash of the fish sauce I think since the coconut aminos tends to be so sweet or have a little bit more sweetness than regular soy sauce, the fish sauce helps balance that out. And just a dash of the sesame oil. Now here's a great trick. I love fresh ginger, but sometimes it's a pain too to try and cook with. So I'll cut a flat edge and I'll use a grater and I'll just grate it. I'm gonna do about a tablespoon right into the dish. So what happens when you grate it like this is all of the skin stays on the top and the ginger comes out of the bottom. And you don't have to peel it or separate it that way. It does it for you. And the vinegars and the acids really help to break down the cabbage. And it smells so good with that sesame oil. If you don't have sesame oil, you can leave it out. And then I'm going to add about a half a cup of avocado oil mayo that I already have measured out. Stir that in. Don't you hate when this happens? You can tell this was machine cut. I don't know what I'm gonna do with that. So we can't eat that. If you caught it in advance, you could probably chop it up and throw it back in, but we don't have that kind of time today. So that's our Asian slaw. It's good in the fridge for 1 to 2 days. It's great with the carnitas, the pulled chicken, pretty much anything where you like that kind of a nice slaw, crunchy texture to go with your meal. And it's also delicious on its own. I've got some romaine lettuce here. And again, romaine hasn't been the easiest thing to find in the store either. But we're just gonna break off a couple pieces of romaine. And we're gonna fill that romaine with the cabbage, with the slaw, and then just top it with one of these hot dogs. Now, who wouldn't want to eat that at a tailgate? I would. And you can serve this to your friends and they'll never know it's Whole30. And again, this sriracha for a nice little street food kick. And that's an amazing lunch that you can have completely pre-prepared and ready to just assemble in your fridge when you're ready to eat it. When you're doing things like this is if you don't want to make a slaw, things like this kimchi are a great option. You could easily do this hot dog dish with the kimchi. You can do the sausages with the kimchi, the shredded chicken from last week. You really want to try and incorporate these types of foods into your dishes and into your regular meals because they're so good for you. Any type of fermented food is great for gut health. It's the reason I also recommend the apple cider vinegar as often as you can incorporate that into your dressings or other dishes. The other thing that I like a lot is this sauerkraut from Trader Joe's. It's sauerkraut and pickles. I'm not a big pickle fan, but this is delicious. And I love this even just with a hot dog out of the microwave. Put these together on a dish, maybe a little bit of applesauce, and that's an excellent lunch and it's done in no time. I want to try and get some nice even slices. This is a Hannah potato. If you haven't tried Hannah potatoes, I highly recommend them. It's a sweet potato, but it's white on the inside. And you can do regular orange sweet potatoes or yams if you like, but I prefer these because I think the flesh stays nice and firm. You can eat the skin. They also make excellent fries in the air fryer or in the oven. I love sweet potato fries in duck fat. It's a really great way to get a healthy fat. But today we're gonna do sweet potato toast. I think it works out better with a potato like this than it does with an orange potato. and they're very easy to do in advance and reheat. So I'm just simply going to cut a flat end, just a little bit, so it's not rocking around on my cutting board. And then I'm gonna start making even slices. And again, like if you saw my onion video from a couple days ago, I'm keeping my knuckles back and I'm using the edges of my fingers, the tops of my fingers, as a guide. So wherever I put my fingers, that's where I'm gonna make my slice, and that helps you keep your slices nice and even. And these potatoes are very hard, so once your blade gets stuck in them, just give it a push. And it helps to have a really sharp knife. Sharp knives are actually safer than dull knives because you can see how hard you have to push to get through something. You certainly wouldn't want to be doing that with a dull knife and then go through your finger. This is the pan that comes with my oven fryer. And I'm just going to place these slices on the pan. And I'm just going to brush the sweet potato slices with some olive oil. And as I said, I did coat the rack a little bit too so they don't stick, but with the oil they shouldn't stick. And I'll season these when they come out of the oven. And these will go in a 400-degree air fryer for 10 minutes. So Julia Child did this fish recipe probably 50 years ago. It was butter and butter and butter and flour and all the things we're not supposed to eat. So let me show you how we can make it Whole30 compliant and still delicious. You can use any white fish you like. I personally like turbot because it tends to be wild caught and pretty inexpensive, so nice economical fish. But Whole Foods didn't have turbot when I was there, but they had halibut. So today we're gonna be making this with halibut. Again, just wing it. Now, one thing that I can say that I definitely would stay away from is tilapia. Tilapia is farm raised. They're terribly treated, and they're just not good eating. Stay away from the tilapia. This is about 2 tablespoons of coconut oil. You probably don't need this much for just one piece of fish, but I like to make sure that there's enough fat in the pan to keep it from sticking, because I don't want the breading or the tapioca flour to get gummy. And that's our chicken, so let's flip that over. It's got 5 more minutes. We're gonna turn it back over so that the tops get nice and crispy. Just that last 5 minutes is all they need. They're looking good already. So now that I've blotted dry the fish and I seasoned the tapioca flour, I'm just going to lightly dust it in the tapioca flour. This is a technique that you can use for any seafood. I even like to do pre-cooked shrimp in it. Buy a bag of frozen pre-cooked shrimp, toss them in some seasoned tapioca flour, and drop them in some coconut oil just to get them golden and crispy. They're already cooked inside. And that's a great way to do shrimp. I'm gonna shake off the excess. And I'm gonna put it right into the pan. You can hear it sizzling already. Fish is heart healthy, it's low in fat, it has good fats like salmon. There are some good salmons that you can find on the market right now that are farmed. I like the Norwegian farmed salmon the best, but anything you can get wild caught is really the better way to go. I did the salmon last week with the Everything Bagel seasoning, and that was farm raised. So it's definitely okay to save a little money and use farm raised. And I think that as long as you're eating fish and you realize the benefits of eating fish on a regular basis, you'll just feel better about it. Let's see how this fish is looking. Again, I'm using a nonstick pan for this, but you don't have to. Yeah, it's gonna need a little more color. So today, we have our oven roasted chicken. We learned how to poach an egg. We have sweet potato toast. We did an excellent yuca and sausage hash. We did our street food bacon wrapped hot dogs, some Asian slaw, and now we're just gonna finish up with this fish. So I've pre-sliced some mushrooms, and you can do all this in the same pan. I like the baby bellas. And I have some ghee. This is not grass-fed ghee, it's the Trader Joe's ghee. Again, using what I can get. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some ghee right into the same pan. About a tablespoon. And once that melts, we're gonna add in the mushrooms. And there's our chicken. That's ready to go. Doesn't that look delicious? Chicken two ways. So now our butter's melted. Just gonna add those mushrooms. Now here's the trick with cooking mushrooms. Mushrooms are very high water content. So what you want to do is cook them until you start to see the liquid coming out. Otherwise, you have mushy mushrooms. Sometimes people don't like mushrooms because they don't like the texture. And I say you'd like them if they're cooked properly. So these are just gonna brown. You'll see them start to get a golden color. And then you'll see even the liquid that was in here from the fish is gonna start to evaporate a little bit. And then suddenly, the liquid starts to come out of the mushrooms. It's like magic. And yes, it sprays all over your stove. So I'm just gonna squeeze a half a lemon right over these mushrooms. And then we'll just put those mushrooms right over that fish. So there's our food for this week. Okay, well thanks for tuning in and I'll see you next week.